20 years ago or so, one of Paul Harvey's radio broadcasts featured this story. The Butterball Turkey Company set up a hotline to answer consumer questions about preparing holiday turkeys. One woman called in to inquire about cooking a turkey that had been in her freezer for 23 years. Their operator told her it might be safe if the freezer had been kept at 0 degrees the entire time, but the operator warned the woman that even if it were safe, the flavor had probably deteriorated and she would not recommend eating it. The caller replied, "That's what we thought. We'll give it to the church." I tell this story because it provides me with two opportunities. One is to try and go cold turkey, as it were, and pass up on the opportunity for a foul-sounding pun. Obviously, I just passed up on that opportunity. The other opportunity I will not pass up on, actually, you've already started it, and that is to talk turkey about stewardship. And if you're counting, that was another foul pun. So let's talk turkey. As we heard, we're kicking off our 3-week stewardship campaign. And this year's United Church of Christ stewardship text is from Thessalonians 2, verses 16 to 7. And it's from Eugene Patterson's paraphrase of the Bible, The Message. Here's what those verses say. May God, who reached out in love and surprised you with gifts of unending help and confidence, put a fresh heart into you. Apostle Paul teaches that each gives as we have made up our mind, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And I pray the woman who offered God a no-good turkey and all the rest of us, all of whom fail from time to respond to God with cheerful, generous giving, to acquire a fresh heart in the light of the many, many gifts God has reached out in love and surprised us with. Sometimes in the hustle and the bustle of modern life, we forget how really blessed we are. Our very breath is a gift. So are all the wonders of creation that surround us, our loved ones, our memories of loved ones, and the skills and the talents that we have. We have many, many amazing gifts provided by God with unending help and confidence that each new dawn offers yet another day of abundant gifts. Every day we get up. Every day we get up. And we are blessed. And some of us have more in material wealth, but not one of us is without the sunrise promise of a day filled with gifts and wealth of much more value than material things. The Creator has seen fit to provide many, many, many blessings over and over and over again. And the cool thing is that we can add to the blessings, multiply the gifts that God has given us. We can use our material wealth for sure, and we certainly are called to do that, but we can also use the rest of our talents too that God has entrusted us with. It's our job to take God's investment in creation and not only be good caretakers of what we have, but manage those gifts and marshal them wisely. And stewardship in its broadest sense applies to all the blessings God's provided. It tends to be heard as applying to money, but really it applies to all the resources God has entrusted us with, material and otherwise. And in today's gospel reading, we hear about 3 stewards entrusted with their earthly lord's property, talents, goodly sums of money. A talent is equal to about 15 years of wages. And 2 of the stewards of the money spread about the talents that they're entrusted with, and their efforts gain much for others, for their Lord, and for themselves. The one steward, though, hides the talents that the Lord gave him like a turkey in a freezer for a long, long time. And in the end, what does he have to offer the Lord? Anything new? Anything but the depressed value of what he was given a long time ago? No. Here's the interesting side note. As a result of the wide circulation of this story, the word talent came into the English language in the Middle Ages as a term for God-given abilities, gifts, and graces. That's why we call it talents to this day. And this usage gives us a powerful hint as to how this story can be heard as a metaphor for both material and other blessings. As we heard, the first steward is given 5 talents. That's 75 years worth of wages. And the second steward is given 2 talents, 30 years worth of wages. And the third steward is given 1 talent, 15 years worth of wages. And from the get-go, we learn that this is a very, very generous and trusting Lord. The Christian Century magazine notes that all 3 servants received talents that did not belong to them, money that was given but not earned. The gift of talents was an act of generosity, a bequest from their master, an indication of the trust in their management. I like the last 4 words a lot from that quote, trust in their management. As I said, I've arrived as a new pastor just in time for a stewardship campaign. And most people kind of cringe when they hear stewardship campaign at church. It tends to be translated as something like the church's month to get me to give money. That's not what stewardship is about. It's not even close to the definition of the term in the Theological Dictionary, which defines it as the responsibility given to humans in creation for managing the resources of the earth. In the church, Christian stewardship involves the whole of life, since all life comes from God and is to be lived for God's glory. And in today's Bible story, 2 of the stewards of talents are gutsy in their response to their Lord's generosity and trust. They use what they've been given for their Lord's glory. They respond to the extraordinary trust, opportunity, and generosity from the Lord by offering their own daring gifts of the radical use of the talents given to them. And the result is that the initial generosity of their Lord is multiplied. They spread the generous blessings of the gifts they were entrusted with around, and so they bless others and God with it. In return, those who are daring in their response get back twice the value, multiplying the gift not for themselves, but for the Lord in the story. And they offer back to their Lord not only what he owed at the start, but the increase that their responses, generosity provided. See, they knew that the Lord owned all the blessings, including the increase. And did you notice the reward the 2 who make daring responses to their Lord's blessings actually receive? They do not get, and they apparently do not expect worldly wealth in return. Instead, they get the blessing of generous opportunity and trust to do bigger and bigger things. And best of all, to join in the joy of their Lord. And in contrast, the servant who fails to notice that Lord's generosity, the one who imagines from the start that the Lord is harsh, even with evidence to the contrary, that one is too afraid of his imagined harsh Lord to daringly spread the wealth around and make it grow, and in the process, to reap rewards for the Lord himself and others. He fails to do that. What does he do? Acting in self-interest out of imagined fear of the Lord and consequences to himself, he hides the gift. His imagined fear breeds insecurity, and he figuratively puts the light he could shine about helping others and his Lord where? Under a bushel, actually underground. Hidden, the blessings he was given can do nothing, and indeed they do nothing. The third steward's folly is failing to do anything worthwhile with the talents that the Lord entrusted to him. And the resources he was entrusted with were not being managed. They were being hidden. They were being stifled. And as a consequence, everyone loses because of it. The talents are not shared and do not increase in value. Gifts do no good underground, under a bushel, or in a freezer for decades. In the end, the third steward offered nothing but the musty, unused, and rusty, stagnated talents that he started with a long, long time ago. And the Lord, others and the stewards himself, gain nothing from this bury the goods mentality for false fear of a harsh Lord. Indeed, the fellow loses the responsibility of being a steward, and in the end still experiences his Lord as harsh. And he misses out on joining in the cheerfulness of being in the presence of what we know to be a generous Lord. The story tells us that. The third steward's hoard the gift responses to grace are in stark contrast to the other stewards' daring responses to the blessing. The other two used the talents entrusted to them. How generously. And the ripple effect of that form of stewardship makes the whole world a better place. Stewardship with God, our heavenly Lord, is supposed to be like that. Not harsh, unless we imagine God harsh, but rather generous, if we imagine God as generous. And it doesn't take much to imagine and experience God as generous. I mentioned already, in general, there are many blessings that God gives to us, and we can fill in the details. Think of all the blessings we have in life. Life itself, for one, and all the wonders and gifts that come with it. Family and partners, children and friends, memories of loved ones, and the powerful ripple effects that continue on in our lives and others. Homes, and churches, jobs, and food and drink and health and happiness. Trees and wildlife, flowers, rainbow fish, water, sunsets, cloud color, birds, chocolate, puns, things, money, love, riches, talents. All our blessings are from God. And if you think about it that way, that all the things are from God, we've been entrusted with so many, many blessings. And all of them are God's. All of them are entrusted to our care and our management and our stewardship. And how do we act as good stewards? Well, I'm pretty sure putting a turkey in a freezer for such a long time that it is good to know, and only then deciding to give it to the church back to God is not such a good thing. That's not stewardship. That's wasting and getting rid of stuff. That's not a response to the blessing in our lives. It's an offering that has no value, no heart, no love to it. Giving God unused talents and the marginally unusable and unusable is not stewardship. Stewardship is taking good care of the resources and using them responsibly, not just for our betterment, but for the betterment of all of creation and the Creator. We have to manage and use them well to do God's good in the world. It's not just avoiding waste and not destroying what's God given to us, but doing what we're called to do. We use our gifts from God for God's purposes as good stewards. We are stewards of all the resources we receive at church and at home and otherwise out in the world. We have to ask ourselves, are we being good stewards? Do we recycle? Do we pollute? Do we try and treat the earth better, increase its value for generations to follow? Do we give our talents in such a way that the world is better for it, transform? Do we give joyously and generously back to God? Or are we burying and hiding our talents and blessings, letting their value to us and others and God just waste away? Are our God-given talents and blessings being used better, mostly just ourselves, for what we want? Are they being used as God wants, also better others in the world to the benefit of God? Well, in my very short time here, it's apparent already that this church is full of people who use the blessings God provides, not just for themselves, but for others, for God. Many of you give of resources like time and talent and treasure to provide a myriad of blessings to the church, to God, and others in the community, from attending council meetings to nursery work to bookkeeping to singing to bell ringing to working with youth to cooking or setting up to cleaning up to fixing things to office work to greeting to ushering to caring to organizing to teaching to mission work to landscaping to recycling, helping those in need. This place is chock full of those who bless this church and God and others with the blessings that they have from God. And it makes all the difference. Children are tended to. Youth are loved. People learn. The building is in relatively good repair. The needy get fed. Sick get attention. Souls are spiritually nurtured. All are welcome. All are safe and honored and respected here. The gospel is not just preached, but given legs and feet and practice. People see and hear the good news in what we say and do. Why? All because you share the good gifts sent from heaven above. The official United Church of Christ theme for stewardship this year is surprising gifts, taken from the verse that I read from the Thessalonians. And while an old, useless, frozen turkey carcass could be considered a surprising gift, that's not what the text is referring to. God's gifts are surprising because they are always extraordinary. And if we stop and think about it, everything we consider ordinary in creation, everything, from sunrise to sunset to nightfall to family and friends and love and life, none of them are ordinary after all. All of them are extraordinary. The ordinary is extraordinary. And that's the surprise. If we open our eyes to all the creation, what God the Creator offers, it is all extraordinary. And may God, who reached out in love and surprised you with gifts of unending help and confidence, put a fresh heart in you, in me, in us. At Advent, which, believe it or not, is just a few weeks away, it's a perfect example of a fresh heart. As we give during the holidays, as we turn our lives toward peace on earth, goodwill to all, as we respond to the spirit of the season with smiles to folks we don't even know, and gifts to loved ones and to strangers. As we do these things, the beauty of the world is enlarged and God's presence is magnified. Right? The world is somehow wonderfully, surprisingly different, filled with more joy and more happiness and more love. And our stewardship is always supposed to be exactly like that. It's not about finances. It's about caretaking ministry of love and blessings and our cheerful responses to the extraordinary love and blessing in our extraordinary lives. It's a time when we look back over the year and our lives and reflect on our blessings and ask how we can cheerfully respond to all the ordinary things that are so very extraordinary. It's about our cheerful exchange of gifts with God. It's about our daring, fresh responses to God's gift to us. It's about a fresh heart, seeing the ordinary for what it really is, extraordinary, cheerfully, generously responding to that rediscovery. And it's true. The church depends on financial gifts to do all that it does, and our pledges ought to be daring and cheerful, generous responses to God's blessings. But it's not just about pledges of money, but pledges of other talents too. We need as many people as possible using the talents they've been given by God. With such talents and blessings being used, we have this church. And if we don't have them being used, we don't have church as we know it. It takes stewards of the Lord who are not willing to let the talents and blessing the Lord have given them to stay buried in the ground, hidden in freezers for decades. It takes a community of people willing to respond to the gifts in their lives and give gifts to others and to God. A cheerful, generous response. The more we cheerfully and generously give blessings back to God, the more joy we feel, and the more talents bless God and bless others and bless us too. Stewardship is a cheerful response to God's trust in our management and a response to this extraordinary creation that God has given to us. May our stewardship always be cheerful, generous responses to the many blessings that God has provided. Amen.